Heard reports to her physical violence upon her by Mr. Depp, does she not?
There are several notes that indicate that Ms. Heard has reported violence by Mr. Depp, yes.
Many, correct?
I wouldn't qualify it as many. I'm not sure what you mean by many.
How many would you say?
I don't know. I don't have the notes in front of me.
Okay, well, what do you recall in deciding to make your opinions in this case?
Well, I'm confused about the dates because I know that Dr. Jacobs treated Ms. Heard even while she was in her prior relationship, leaving her prior relationship with her last wife.
Dr. Curry, I'm not going to ask you to try to bring in extraneous things. I'm asking you what you recall of these notes.
But the dates would have been different based on that alone.
Okay.
And I recall that there was quite a bit of information because these were copious notes spanning back in time from her relationship with Tasha.
So Dr. Curry, please answer my question. How many occasions do you recall
I don't know.
Dr. Jacobs documenting Amber reporting physical abuse?
I don't know.
Now, you also said that you listened to audio tapes in this case, correct?
Yes.
Did you hear Mr. Depp admitting to headbutting Ms. Heard?
That is not what I heard.
You didn't hear that?
I heard a conversation about headbutting. I did not hear him, as you said, admit to headbutting Ms. Heard.
Okay, that's your characterization of it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see the videotape of Mr. Depp in the kitchen?
Yes.
Okay, did Ms. Heard imagine that or create that, or was she responsible for that somehow?
Objection, respectfully.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay. What, if any, impact did that have on your opinions watching Mr. Depp in that video?
I'm not sure. It was one of many pieces of the exhibits and other collateral data that I considered. I'm not sure what the direct impact was or if that could be measured.
All right. Now, counsel asked you whether you had conducted any type of examination on Mr. Depp, and I believe your answer was no, correct?
No.
You did not review any medical records or psychological records from Mr. Depp either, did you?
I reviewed all of the records that were available.
Do you recall reviewing medical and psychological records on Mr. Depp?
Yes.
Do you recall Dr. Blaustein referring to Mr. Depp having rage?
No, I actually recall him referring to Ms. Heard in that note.
Your testimony is that Dr. Blaustein was referring to Amber Heard as having rage?
I transcribed several of the notes, and I may be missing a time when I said that about Mr. Depp. The handwriting was very difficult to transcribe, but there was one instance in which I recall transcribing him stating that Mr. Depp reported that Ms. Heard had rage.
Dr. Blaustein's deposition was taken, was it not?
I don't recall.
Do you recall, so I take it then you don't recall him testifying that Mr. Depp told him he had rage and demons?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you recall Dr. Blaustein testifying that Mr. Depp looked at his wife, Amber, like his mother or his sister that he didn't like?
I haven't seen his deposition. I don't recall that.
Okay. Now, did you see and do you know whether Mr. Depp has ever been diagnosed with any personality disorders?
That's not relevant to my task to conduct an evaluation of Ms. Heard. So I do not know that he has had one. It was not in the records that he did.
All right. So one way or the other, you don't know whether Mr. Depp suffers from any personality disorders.
That's not my task.
Okay. Let me go to IPV perpetrators. Would you agree that accusations of infidelity can be considered one of the characteristics of a personality perpetrator of IPV?
It can be a characteristic of a lot of things. It is something that can be weaponized if somebody is trying to or is having rage toward their partner.
Let's go to page 270. Line 3, my question was, are accusations of infidelity considered one of the characteristics of a perpetrator, a personality perpetrator of IPV?
Objection.
The objection.
The question is vague and ultimately ambiguous.
I don't understand the objection.
I'll overrule the objection.
Okay. And your answer under oath
Can
at
you
that time?
remind me of the page? I thought you
Page
would-
270, line 3 was where my question was.
Okay.
And your answer is at line 8. You said it can be, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And interrogating your partner about unfounded accusations of infidelity can be abusive. Would you agree?
It can be if they're unfounded, yes.
Okay. And psychological consequences for a victim of IPV can include diminished self-esteem, correct?
Yes.
Depressed mood,
Yes.
anxiety,
Yes.
fearfulness,
Certainly.
diminished self-agency,
Yes.
feeling powerless,
Yes.
loss of sleep.
Yes.
And IPV is a traumatic stressor. Would you agree?
It is.
All right. And IPV is capable of resulting in PTSD, is it not?
It is.
Okay. And IPV is capable of resulting in other trauma-based disorders, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Amber's medical examination, she was cooperative, correct?
Her psychological, yes. She was cooperative and polite.
Okay. And in the 2 full days of examination, you felt she was polite and answered all your questions, except in one instance where she furrowed her brow when you were asking about friendships in high school, correct?
That's not correct.
All right, let's go to page 275. So we start on 274 with the, was she polite? You said yes. Was she cooperative? Yes. Did she answer your questions? For the most part, yes. This is, now we're on page 275, lines 4 and 5. And then my question was, did she at any time become combative or unfriendly with you or angry? And your answer was, there was one instance in which she appeared annoyed and the posturing forward a bit, more assertive tone, furrowed brow, when I was questioning something, following up on data that had been inconsistent about friendships in high school. Other than that, she was very polite. Is that your answer at that time?
That was my answer at that time, and it's inconsistent with the question you had just asked me.
And would you agree that appearing for this examination with an expert who had been retained by Mr. Depp more than a year earlier might be a little stressful?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, not only had you been retained by Mr. Depp, but what had been communicated by Mr. Depp's team was that you had called Amber Heard a liar and a perpetrator of abuse, correct?
First of all, I'd like to clarify that I was not retained by Mr. Depp. I was retained by Mr. Depp's counsel. And what I can say that, yes, any examinee in a forensic context, you would consider that they're probably stressed.
All right. Would you agree that all perpetrators of IPV have anger management issues?
Yes.
And a large portion of IPV perpetrators have substance abuse issues?
It's one of many factors that correlates with intimate partner violence, but there are certainly many people who perpetuate intimate partner violence who do not have substance abuse issues.
All right, let's go to 131, line 17.
$131, you said?
Yes, line 12 is what I have here. And I'm talking about...
Let's briefly pause this testimony and welcome in a couple of great legal minds with us. St. Paul, Minnesota, criminal defense attorney, former federal prosecutor Jack Rice, and in New York, a former senior homicide prosecutor, Bernardo Villalona. Thank you for being with us. Bernardo, you've not been on with me, and I'm so appreciative. Let me start with you. This cross-examination is arguably a little more argumentative than we've seen from some of the other cross-examination. How effective is it for Amber Heard's team, in your opinion?
So, Judge Ashley, yes, this is a little bit more argumentative. Actually, we're seeing a cross-examination that is kind of what a cross-examination is supposed to look like, because we really haven't seen that throughout this trial. Is this working for Amber? I'm not sure, because I think that doctor has already sold Amber out in the sense of that jury is not going to look at Amber the same when she gets up on the stand. This doctor has already said that, Amber, look, you tend to exaggerate, you tend to lie, you tend to misrepresent things, and that's going to be in the back of their mind. So while this defense attorney is trying to discredit her qualifications, this doctor is remaining strong in her decisions and her answers, and that is playing a huge role for Johnny Depp in this case.
All right, Jack Rice, weigh in and give us your opinion as you've been watching this testimony.
Yeah, she's too combative. I mean, frankly, what the opposing counsel needs to do in this case is narrow down her questions. These are declarative statements, one fact at a time. And what we're seeing are multiple statements, complex questions, things like, you were happy that, well, drop the quibble words, go very narrow, pull directly from the transcripts and say, you said this, you said this. The purpose is using this for close so you can undercut the quality of this witness. What you're doing right now is actually the opposite. And in some ways, you may actually be hurting your own client because people are thinking you're being unfair. You can't do that even to somebody on the other side. You simply can't do it.
And Jack, to your point, the trial advocacy skills that I know you possess, but one fact, one statement posed as a question is really how everyone's taught to try a case during cross-examination. You're both going to stay with me for that. I'm grateful. We do need to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to take you back in to the testimony of this psychologist.
513.
Ms. Heard wasn't the only one who had a problem with your drinking, correct?
Sir, if anyone had a problem with my drinking at any time in my life, it was me. The only person that I have ever abused in my life is myself.
Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, famous defamation trial. We want to take you back to court. You haven't missed any testimony on the stand. Dr. Shannon Curry, who is diagnosed, in her opinion, let me say, she's diagnosed Amber Heard with personality disorders. Let's go back into court as she is under cross-examination by Heard's legal team.
Just to give context, remember I was asking you what percentage of people you treat that are perpetrators, and you'd said 5%. Do you recall that, just for substance?
I see that here.
Okay, and then I said, of the 5% that are IPV perpetrators that you've treated over the last 8 years, how many of these perpetrators have substance abuse issues? And your answer was?
I see that I answered with a figure of speech, a large portion.
Okay, thank you. And it's common for the perpetrator to essentially gaslight the victim, accuse them of being the perpetrator. Would you agree?
Are you in a different area, or are you asking me a separate question?
I'm asking you a question.
Oh.
And it's common.
Sorry, can you please repeat it?
Yes. And it's common for the perpetrator to essentially gaslight the victim, accuse them of being the perpetrator. Would you agree? That's exactly how it was asked in the deposition. So
I understand it is a compound question. I'll sustain the objection.
And it's common for the perpetrator to essentially gaslight. I don't think that's, Your Honor, I think it's just one question. Let me try it. To gaslight the victim, isn't it?
That's a characteristic of psychological abuse, yes.
Okay, and it's common then for them to accuse them of being the perpetrator, the victim.
That's a characteristic of abuse from women perpetrated against men. It's actually very, very common. About 90% of male victims of IPV have reported that a female partner who abuses them makes threats to report their partner as an abuser, it's less common for men to make that statement to female partners just because there's less potential consequence.
Isn't it true, though, that some form of gaslighting is often present in these personality-based IPV scenarios?
Yes.
Okay. And it's distressing for the victim to be accused, is it not?
Absolutely.
It causes them a lot of fear,
Certainly.
and it causes them a lot of distress.
Absolutely, yes.
And in fact, they feel falsely accused, correct?
Yes.
And they feel paranoid,
Yes.
and they feel frightened,
Yes.
afraid that everyone's going to believe the perpetrator, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, they're afraid they're going to lose their security, correct?
Can you clarify what you mean by security?
I'll ask the next one. And they're afraid they're going to lose their reputation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about the testing for a moment. You talked about the MMPI-2, but that's not the most recent MMPI, is it?
No, it's the most researched.
Okay. Now, you need to have an elevated, on the MMPI, there was only one section that had elevated scores, correct?
No, that's not correct.
It was the K section, correct?
That's not correct.
Okay. And was there any elevated score over 65 on the MMPI?
I would need to take a look at it. If, I provided a 25-page interpretation outline. If you're able to pull that up, I'd be happy to go over any of the individual scores for you.
Can you recall any clinical scales for the MMPI-2 for Amber Heard that were above 65 as you sit there today?
Again, there are multiple scales on this test, 25 pages worth listed. So if you can pull it up, then I can review and give you a confident answer.
What can you recall as you sit there?
I'm hesitant to do that because I don't want to make an error by ignoring hundreds of scale scores.
And would you agree that you can't make a pathological determination or diagnosis if the scales are not elevated on the MMPI-2?
I would not agree with that.
Okay. Now, one of the answers that Amber gave is that it's hard for her to feel safe, correct?
Are you talking about the MMPI-2?
Yes.
Again, I don't recall. There are 567 items on that. I would need to see her results.
Well, it's a common trauma symptom, isn't it, to not feel safe?
Sure.
And safety concerns are common among women who have been victimized, correct?
Women and men, yes.
Okay, and common especially for sexually victimized people. Would you agree?
Any type of victimization, yes.
Okay, and hard to trust. That's a common after effect of interpersonal violence-related trauma, correct?
Sure.
And memory difficulties. Amber said she felt she had holes. Do you recall that?
I do. And her account was different than typical memory difficulties with trauma.
It is common for individuals who have experienced trauma.
And it's actually
to
not
have-
common. No, it's a symptom, but it's the least common.
In fact, a DSM-5 diagnosis for PTSD includes a, quote, inability to remember an important aspect of the traumatic event, end of quote. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. And memory difficulties are a symptom of PTSD, correct?
Certain types of memory difficulties, yes.
Okay. Now, do you recall when Amber says the first incident of abuse took place?
I believe it was, the first incident in which yes. So she stated that it was early on in their relationship.
Okay. Do you recall it involving?
I don't recall the exact date off the top of my head.
Do you recall it being a tattoo, something related to a tattoo?
I do.
Okay. Now, if someone had been subjected to a 4-year relationship characterized by repeated IPV, they can have symptoms, correct?
Yes.
Intense anxiety,
Yes, certainly.
depressed or irritable states,
Actually, it's not so much states. When you're looking at a real trauma reaction, it's pretty persistent. It's less of these transient states.
Intimate problems?
Yes.
Relationship difficulties?
Yes.
And these are symptoms you're also attributing to the personality disorder, correct?
Yes, there are some key differences.
Okay. Now let's talk for a moment specifically about a couple of the profiles on the MMPI. This is not an exaggerated profile for her, is it?
No, actually, that was something unique. When she completed objective broadband measures, where the questions, you don't know what the questions are getting at, they seem completely random. She raised scores that indicated that she was trying to minimize any mental issues and appear completely free of pathology. When she took tests that asked questions that were specific to trauma, that's when you'd see these extreme exaggerations.
All right, let's go to page 337.
We're going to take a pause here. We'll pick up right where we left off. You're not going to miss anything for this commercial break. We'll be right back.
6'3".
Let's get you back to court right where we left off during cross-examination of the psychologist, Dr. Shannon Curry.
My question on line 7, this is not an exaggerated profile, is it, for her? And your answer under oath at that time was no, it is not an exaggerated profile. Do you see that?
Yes, we're
That's what
talking
you
about the
testified-
MMPI here.
You
Yes.
testified under oath at that time, correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Now, the profile is also not consistent with malingering, correct?
The MMPI-2 profile, it's specific to how she approached this test, and you're correct. For this test, it was a defensive profile, not an exaggerated profile.
So my question on line 10 was, this is not a profile consistent with malingering, correct? And your answer under oath at that time was correct. On this test, it is not consistent with malingering, period, right?
Yes.
That was your full answer. Okay. Now, is it your testimony under oath today that you have not been asked to testify concerning Ms. Heard's behavior in the context of her relationship with Mr. Depp, including any abuse?
That's correct.
Okay. And you have not made any determinations, including any of opinions that Ms. Heard abused Mr. Depp or Mr. Depp abused Ms. Heard, correct?
Correct. That's outside of the scope of psychology.
Okay. And you cannot testify whether Amber Heard suffered any emotional distress as a result of any of the defamatory comments that she has alleged Mr. Waldman made through Mr. Depp made through Mr. Waldman, correct?
What I can testify is that there was no indication of a decline in psychological functioning showing any injury since she's been with Mr. Depp.
You cannot testify one way or the other on that, correct? Your Honor, may we approach?
Okay.
All right, approaching again, we still have with us our attorneys. Jack Rice, let me ask you first, what do you think of all these sidebars during this trial?
Yeah, they're getting in the way because I think you have a jury who has busy lives. There's places they have to be. They're giving up a lot. And when you feel like they're talking about things that have nothing to do with you and that's why they're there, it starts to get in the way of that conversation. I mean, what's amazing right now, though, is that you're watching this attorney continuing to swing at this expert. Here is a perfect example of a very good expert who's smart, competent, capable, knows how to answer a question. If she doesn't know, she comes back, she pivots at the jury, all of those things. It's very hard to put a glove on somebody like that.
Yeah, and the defense attorney keeps interrupting her answers. Let's go back to court.
suffered emotional distress as a result of the defamatory statements. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, redirect.
Dr. Curry, you were just asked a question about malingering
Yes.
and made reference to the MMPI-2. Is there another test that you did to make a determination with respect to malingering?
Yes. So malingering is a term that most psychologists, we try to be careful of it because it indicates an intent for secondary gain. I prefer feigning, which you had brought up earlier, because it indicates that somebody is intentionally exaggerating, but I don't know necessarily why. So I think that's a more accurate term in general. On the MMPI-2, yes, there was no exaggerated profile. I also gave her the CAPS-5. I don't know if you'll remember, but that is the clinician-administered PTSD scale consistent with the DSM-5. And on that, there were signs of gross exaggeration. I also looked at the test results that were provided by Dr. Hughes, and on an objective test of trauma, there is a scale specific to intentional exaggeration on that test, and Ms. Heard was in the 98th percentile, meaning that she had engaged in extreme levels of exaggeration.
Thank you. You were asked about intimacy problems, relationship difficulties associated with IPV, and you then said there were some key differences.
Yes.
What are those?
So what you see when we're talking about the personality disorders is there is a very consistent pattern of the aggression, the violence, the irritability. First of all, it's escalated. But second of all, it occurs when there is either, for the borderline component, a threat of abandonment, a perceived slight, feeling like the person is about to leave you, about to walk away to get some space from an argument. It also occurs to a more mild extent, but when there's a loss of attention and a need to manipulate to try to get that attention back. But it's not, when somebody has PTSD, that irritability is sort of at a low, constant level, or it's completely random. For instance, you might have a Vietnam vet who went straight to bars for a period to get into fights with the hope that he would kill somebody and just self-destruct. So it's a very different type of presentation. IPV, it might be more irritability, but that's actually less of a symptom for female IPV victims. Usually what you'll see is somatic symptoms, the depression, a lot of fearfulness and anxiety, but typically more complaints about somatic symptoms.
Okay. You testified that some of the professionals involved in this case had to take their patient at her word. What did you mean by that?
So when you're providing therapy, you're in a very different role than an examiner. When you're the forensic examiner, you're just really looking at data to make a decision. When you're a therapist, you're an advocate for your client's well-being. And in fact, it's considered extremely unethical for a treating provider to ever provide opinion testimony like I'm providing, because it's so well known in our field that you're going to have an automatic bias for your client. It's almost a sense of protection, advocacy, wanting their best, which is why we also know that it's very inappropriate to convey any sort of opinion about whether a crime occurred, whether abuse occurred. We can certainly believe our clients, we can support them in their therapy and take them at their word, but when giving opinions and consultations, we have to be very, very cautious and really only provide the facts. We would state things in terms of, my client did report this, I saw this, here was our treatment plan, here was the diagnosis. It's we're taught, we're trained to stay away from making any sort of opinions, understanding that most of the time, and most of Ms. Heard's providers were just treating Ms. Heard. They had never so much as done an initial interview with Mr. Depp and gotten his whole life story or his symptoms or his side of any of it. And they're gonna be advocating, and the treatment relationship is about helping your client achieve well-being, not making formal psychological or psychiatric opinions.
So you're asked a question about a series of doctors. Dr. Cohen, treating physician?
Yes, he was a psychologist.
Yeah. Dr. Banks, treating physician?
Dr. Banks, yes, treating psychiatrist.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes, treating psychologist.
Every one of them had to take Amber Herdish's word, right?
Yes.
Excuse me. Oh, overruled. I'll allow it.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Is this witness subject? Yes, sorry. Is this witness subject to recall?